Welcome to the Battlefield Show. I'm your host, Sage Goodwin, and as always, I'm joined by Sammy Boy. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Doing pretty good. We were talking about before the podcast that this is like a time of year where everything's like all is happening, and you just really start to feel the like the continuous pushing starts to really take effect. So I'm really tired right now, but excited to talk some Battlefield, and we're hopping in. We're going to talk about the state of shooters in this episode. So we're going to talk about Battlefield 2042, Call of Duty, as well as X-Defiant, Apex, and just generally how we're feeling about the shooter space, and do just a general vibe check, you know? So let's jump right in. Vibe check, man. How you feeling about shooters right now?
It's a weird time. I think, objectively, I think if you look at right now compared to, say, 5 years ago and, 10 years ago, this is not a good time for shooters.
It's not good, Bob. It's not good.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that, the games that are out, they're not bad. It's just that it's not... Well, I think we peaked. And
I feel like we have too many. Again. I feel like we're struggling from saturation.
Yeah, 100%. And there's no real back in the day it was just a bit more simple. There was just Call of Duty and Battlefield and lump Halo and that into those there was those types of games. It was either the arcade shooter or the slightly bigger game in Battlefield and stuff like that. And there was obviously a few other games, but it felt like there was just those two genres. Now there's the whole battle royale scene as well over the last 5 or so years, which I personally think was a good era, but I think that has also slowed down a little bit. I'm not as interested by it anymore, mostly because I think those games are kind of worn off, and there's not been a new battle royale that's come out that I'm like, okay, this has reinvigorated my love for the genre. And kind of the same for the other, I guess you call them sub-genres, so arcade shooters and the Battlefield type sandbox games. There's not been any games that have been wow, this is peak, arcade shooter or peak sandbox shooter. There hasn't been anything like that. So it just kind of feels like the shooter genre or industry is tired at the moment, kind of like what we were just talking about, where this time of year it's just oh man, I need to just keep pushing and get through the year. It kind of feels like the industry is like that a bit. There's just nothing new and exciting at the moment. The only thing for me that's exciting is X-Defiant, and that's not even because it's some brand new big thing. It's just because it's actually kind of going back to the roots of the arcade shooter.
Yeah.
So even though I'm personally keen for it, it's not something that I'm going to gas up and be oh my God, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. It's just a pretty normal shooter. It's just that it's kind of going back to what I used to like. And look, 3 months after it comes out, I might be bored of it. So I don't know. It's definitely a weird time for the shooter genre. I think, I don't know if COVID had an impact on it, because obviously shooters are all when you compare them to most other games out there, they probably do put out the most content and updates and stuff compared to most other games. Even other multiplayer games, look at FIFA and stuff, they're not putting out crazy amounts of content. You can't really release new maps in FIFA. There's just the stadiums that they play in. They can't just add new maps and stuff. That's not how it works. They update it more with updating the ratings of the players and stuff like that. There's not really brand new content. Whereas in the shooter space, that's not the case. It's there has to be constant updates and constant flow of content. And I wonder if COVID kind of, I guess, took a hit on that, because most other games out there, single player games, probably weren't as affected by it because they don't have to release that stuff constantly.
Yeah,
it may have slowed down the launch of a game. They may have had to delay a game by a year, but it doesn't stop the flow of content. So I don't know why it's like it is, but it's definitely been better. I'll say that much. Yeah,
and I feel before, if we look about before Battlefield 2042 came out, I remember talking about it on the podcast. This is the golden era for shooter games. We've got Halo, we've got Battlefield, we've got Call of Duty, all of these heavy hitter franchises that were legendary, all came out around the same time, but all of them have had very similar struggles. And I feel like we're in this space or time in the gaming shooter space right now, where like there's just a level of transition. We're going from what was traditionally a shooter, which was we're going to make a game, it's going to release, and then we're going to add DLC to it that comes out every 3 months. And that was kind of like the premium pass kind of program. And now we're in this live service era. We're in this time frame where people expect different things from the shooters than they have ever done before. And like you said, you don't look at FIFA, which has an online component and it's very active. They aren't adding like new maps and stuff. Like this is very much like a unique thing to shooters. And I feel like that's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, it's I never really thought about it like that. I don't see many other multiplayer games outside of shooters. To be fair, most of the multiplayer things that I play are shooters, so maybe that's why. But
if you look at MMOs, I mean that's another good example of like how well you can do a live service, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just like, I wonder if they almost went a bit too hard in this industry so quickly, and now they've like the expectations are so high for what we expect per season and stuff,
and they're set by new games. It's not like the old guard are setting the standards for new games. It's like XDefiant, it's like Apex, it's like Fortnite. They're setting the standard on what shooters are now, rather than the vice versa, which is how they've done forever.
Yeah, and like I do think Fortnite is a huge part of that, and this could sound a negative thing. I mean this in a positive way. Fortnite has kind of ruined this genre, to be honest, because they have done such a crazy good job over the last, it came out in 2017, I think, so 6 or so years, where there was a bit of a lull there, where I think when like a kind of Warzone and Apex were both doing really well, and I think Fortnite dropped a little bit. It was just kind of quiet. I didn't hear much about it, but it's now back on top again. Like they've done such a crazy good job, and the pure amount of content they put out that is also really high quality. It's not just like filler content. Mm-hmm. They just do crazy stuff like every other month.
Yeah, with big franchises like Ahsoka's coming like into the game here
having
soon.
All the Star Wars and Marvel like stuff involved. That alone,
we've had more updates for Star Wars content in Fortnite than any other Star Wars game ever released.
Yeah, so again, it sounds like I'm saying that's a bad thing. It's a good thing. I want them to keep pushing the industry forward, but it kind of just, in a way, at least now, kind of sucks because they've kind of like ruined our expectations. And I think, look, if every dev team could live up to what they're doing, then the shooter genre will be absolutely flying, but I think not everyone's caught up to that yet. Mm-hmm. I think Epic are just like, they're just ahead of the curve. So yeah, it's a weird situation where randomly one game feels like it's kind of just ruined not even ruined the genre. It's more like
changed the game.
Expectations so high that we're now like, okay, well, Jesus, this company's killing it. Like, why the hell isn't every other company doing that? Mm-hmm. Which is, to be fair, probably a little bit unfair on the other companies, because it's just like, to them it was probably a bit of a shock to the system too. They're just like, what the hell? Epic Games just come out of nowhere with this absolute banger, and they're just killing it. How the hell are we like, Jesus, what are we gonna do here? So yeah, it's a weird situation, but it's also a good thing at the end of the day. As much as it, I guess, kind of sucks right now, I think it will just continue to push probably the whole industry forward, not even just shooters, just like gaming in general. And I think that's a good thing. Like, even you look at Fortnite, kind of made gaming a bit like mainstream. It was on TV and everything. My parents know what
I mean,
Fortnite
freaking
is, so, like,
Fortnite gamers like Ninja were on Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, like stuff like that. That's a great thing, really, for gaming. It's going to get more people. You know, a lot of investors and stuff in the past may not have invested in it. Now they're like, oh, this is a massive thing, and it's been on. You know, it was on Alan, so it must be real. Like, that's probably how investors think, because they don't. A lot of those high up millionaire businessmen, they probably don't.
Like, I saw that game on my late night TV station.
Yeah, like that's how I think of those type of investors. They're all like 60-year-olds that don't really understand what's going on. They just go like, oh, that looks like it's going to blow up. Like, just feed all my money into that.
What kind of games now?
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a weird time, but I think this rough patch isn't like something that it's not like the shooter genre is dead. It's more just we're in a period, I think, where it's like trying to figure itself out. And I think it will benefit from that in the future. It's just that we're not there yet.
I think it's really exacerbated from, if you look at where we are in gaming right now, we are in one of the best years for gaming in the last at least 5 years, maybe decade, maybe 15 years. Depending on what games you're into, this is one of the best years for games, period. We have the new Zelda. We have Starfield that's coming out. Spider-Man. There's a new Mario game coming out. Like, no matter what kind of game you're interested in, there's probably something incredibly good for you. Unless you're into shooters.
Yeah. Literally. Which is a shame because it's my main... it's like the main type of game that I've played for the last 15 years, and every other game is killing it. Which, don't get me wrong, is still good because I do still play a lot of single player games and stuff too. But it's just like, can we sacrifice maybe 2 of these single player games and get a really good shooter? That would be a worthy trade.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think obviously, like you said, COVID has a big part to play in this game. COVID paired with a shift to live service, paired to a shift of like these big game companies having to change how they make games remotely, how games are perceived and played now, and just even more expectations when you look at what a game needs to be when it gets released in 2023 and onward. And I think there's a level of support that's expected. There's a level of quality that's expected now, and there's a level of community that people really want and they need. And if you look at what Battlefield, there's a discussion going on around a news piece or an article that took something that was said in an investor's call and kind of flipped it on its head a little bit and came to a conclusion that a lot of people were like, he never said these words, but I think it's a good discussion to have of people at EA. The article was all about people at EA feel like Battlefield is going to be able to compete with Call of Duty. And I feel like there's someone on Twitter that was saying the problem with this thinking is that Battlefield doesn't need to compete with Call of Duty. It never can compete with Call of Duty, and every time it has tried to compete with Call of Duty, it has failed. It needs to build its own thing that is Battlefield and not try to copy off the coattails of Call of Duty.
Yeah, I think it's weird that they kind of think that way because obviously from a business perspective, it's a competitor because it's in the same genre. Like, that's fair enough. But in the actual gaming space, they've never been similar, not even remotely similar. So I don't get the whole competition thing. To an extent, I think, like I said on last week's episode, a lot of people who play shooters just kind of do play any shooter. So, like, for me, I'll play a Battle Royale, then the next week I'll play an arcade shooter, then the next week I'll play Battlefield. Like, I kind of like all of them.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of small crossover where there's a lot of people that just like any game where you just have a gun and are shooting at people. That's fun, right? But for the most part, people who are really big Call of Duty fans, they don't like Battlefield. And that's not because they think it sucks. That's just not their type of game. They like the small scale game. They need to stop thinking of it as a competitor in that sense. And try to, like, I don't know, they need to look at it as they're pretty lucky, really, that there's not any there's no competitors to Battlefield, I don't think, in terms of
the only like competitor is built up because people want Battlefield, and it's called BattleBit.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say BattleBit and that Delta Force game that are coming out. Now it's like, okay, actually there may be some competitors on the way, because I think those dev teams have gone, well, not even dev teams. Some of them were like a bunch of people. Like BattleBit was made by like 7 people or something. These people are looking at it and being like, there is a big void in that area, and we're not competing with Call of Duty. We're competing with like Battlefield. We want to take their spot. Yeah. And I think that's what Battlefield's done wrong, is that they're looking in the wrong areas. They needed to just focus on themselves. And there's a saying, I don't know if this is just an Aussie saying or not, but they say look after your own backyard. That's what they needed to do. They need to focus on them controlling that sandbox niche, because Call of Duty isn't that. They don't need to compete with them.
Yeah.
You can have little bits of competition where, introduce a smaller scale mode that's, how Apex is a battle royale, but it's got like the arena mode where it's kind of it's really just like Call of Duty. That's fine. Having like a mode like that is fine. Putting a battle royale in there to somewhat compete is fine. But the core of the game, they should have just focused on their previous games and what they did well, and just try to double down on that and try to lock down that sandbox niche as their own, because now they have kind of opened up to, BattleBit's doing really well, and that Delta Force game looks really good. Like, there is actually now competition. So even though I just said Battlefield doesn't have competition, well, that's a lie. It definitely does now, because I think people have sort of
because they stopped making Battlefield.
Yeah. And the thing that you'll notice is that these competitors, it's not Call of Duty. Call of Duty's not looking at Battlefield going, oh, let's try and steal their space. They don't care. They're doing their own thing. They've done their, like I said, the little modes where they do ground war. That's kind of the Call of Duty version of Battlefield, where it's 32 versus 32 and stuff. But that's a mode. It's not their main focus. Like, there's just something else they're putting in the game. So Call of Duty's not looking at Battlefield and going, we need to like stamp them out and take, make at our genre. That's not what they're doing. What it is these smaller companies going, actually, I think we can squeeze in there and make it our genre.
Yeah.
And that's really on them. They've left it open for that, because they seem to be trying to do everything else. They were almost too much looking at the other games out there that aren't in their genre. You can look at Call of Duty. You can look at there's a lot of similarities between Battlefield, like as in 2042, and Apex. Firstly, they're not even a competitor. It's the same. It's both EA.
Yeah.
It's like not really. EA is not competing with EA. And then also, it's a completely different type of game. So they've put like the specialist system is kind of like the hero system or the legend system in Apex. Like, they're just doing stuff that's not related to their game, trying to compete with those type of games. Or at least, even if it's not competing, they're taking inspiration from it, which is okay, but you can take too much inspiration from something, and then when it's not really in your field, it doesn't make sense. And now we've got these games like BattleBit that's just doing the basics. Like, BattleBit really is just low poly Battlefield.
Yeah,
and they
literally.
haven't changed it. They're not doing anything crazy. Like, they literally just made pretty much Battlefield with bad graphics, and it's doing pretty well. So that goes to show that that's what people are after. If people want to play that sandbox type of game, I'm not trying to play Call of Duty cross Apex, cross Battlefield. I'm trying to play Battlefield. And unfortunately, DICE have not really given us a typical Battlefield to play, which leaves me open to go, oh, maybe I'll try the BattleBit game, or maybe I'll try Delta Force, because Battlefield hasn't really done it for a lot of players out there, and unfortunately, that's on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to ask you, as someone who has a little bit more experience with Call of Duty and has played Call of Duty and Battlefield more consistently and longer, where do you see this comparison between Call of Duty and Battlefield 2042 right now? Because I feel like they're as close as they've ever been most recently.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to think about. I think they're both just not doing that well. And I think that makes it feel like it's maybe a bit closer than it is. It's kind of also dependent on what people's, I guess, metrics for success are, right? If it's just down to sales, then Call of Duty has always won. It will always win. There's never going to be a Battlefield that outsells Call of Duty. Mm-hmm. That's just fact. I will literally bet the house on that.
Oh, yeah.
That's just never going to happen.
Even on the quote-unquote crappy years of Battlefield, or Call of Duty, it dwarfs the best years of Battlefield.
Yeah, Battlefield 1 and Infinite Warfare, that was the closest it's ever been. And I don't remember the figures, but like Call of Duty completely outsold it. And it was what everyone sees as essentially the worst COD ever. And Battlefield 1, a lot of people didn't love Battlefield 1, but I think a lot of people do. And even those who don't love it, initially it was like so much hype that a lot of people got it. So yeah, that just goes to show that it's just they're not in competition in terms of that. So if that's people's metric for success, it's just impossible to judge also because like that example, Battlefield 1 was absolutely clear of Infinite Warfare. It is absolutely 10 times the better game, but it didn't sell more. So that just goes to show that the amount of sales and stuff doesn't really matter. I think they're just as close as they've been in terms of they're both not doing well. I personally think that 2042 is currently a better shooter than Modern Warfare 2. And
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 2 is a very... Call of Duty always end up with like polished games. I think that when they suck, it's not because they're buggy and stuff. It's just because they're not good games. Usually when Battlefield sucks, it kind of is because it's like super buggy or it's got bigger issues like the specialist system or the maps weren't designed well, like in this game. Call of Duty generally, from an objective standpoint, when you just try to remove all bias and stuff, they're very well designed essentially every time. There's been a couple, misses here and there, but it's a weird one where that game is like, if you ask me to compare both Modern Warfare 2 and 2042 and just remove all bias as to which one I like playing more and stuff and just look at, okay, what's the gunplay look like in this game? What's it look like in that game? Which one is better? I probably would go towards Modern Warfare 2, but the thing is it doesn't play very well. It's not fun to play. 2042 is in a good spot where it is fun to play. And so I actually think that 2042 is the better shooter, the more enjoyable shooter, which is crazy to say because the way that the game launched.
Yeah.
I never thought I would be saying that. Because also Modern Warfare 2 isn't necessarily a bad shooter. It's not designed poorly. It just didn't really do anything new and exciting. And so, yeah, it's definitely as close as it's ever been, but it's still, Call of Duty has that potential that because they release a game every year.
Mm-hmm.
The next one's, probably a good chance that it'll be better than Modern Warfare 2, and then it's completely flipped the script that the next COD will probably be better than 2042. So it's like, it's a weird spot to be in where I think currently I'd lean 2042, but yeah, it also just depends on what, do they cancel 2042 after season 6 and then at that point I'd definitely lean Call of Duty again. It's really hard to tell, but I think they are, like you said, as close as they've ever been in terms of like the quality of the games anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that you've got some good points there. I feel like Battlefield has put in a lot of work. We're nearing 2 years of the game, and we're getting to a point where I feel like this is where the game should have launched. Like you said, Call of Duty releases a game every year. They're able to test and iterate and get new ideas in there. But also, they don't change things drastically like Battlefield does. They don't release an entirely new mechanic every single time a game comes out. They iterate, and they have 3 different studios that take a game, which is every game has about a 3-year cycle or so, and they have 3 studios, so they can consistently put out a new game every year. And I think that's really interesting to be able to look at that and see how that affects a game and its life cycle. Battlefield, historically, they put out a game every 3 years. They aren't looking to drastically, or they aren't looking to iterate every year with it, I should say. They aren't looking to, make a little bit of a change here, make a little bit of change there, and then release something slightly better each time. They go 180 degrees each time. They try to do something different to little success if we look at the last few times that they've done stuff like that. But they are trying to do something entirely different each time, which is why I feel like they've lost really the soul of what 2042 or what Battlefield is in general. Is like they keep on trying to reinvent the wheel each time instead of like making the wheel better. Yeah,
that was something that I think that's why early on in my like shooter career, I guess that's what I liked about Battlefield, was that Call of Duty was very much the same every year, and I really liked that Battlefield had those big changes. It was every 2 to 3 years a game was coming out, and it was like from Battlefield 3 to 4, even though those games were very similar, it was like, man, look at this. They've added this big Levolution system and it's crazy. The freaking flag in the middle of the map falls down and it's, like that was mental at the time. And that's what I liked about Battlefield. Then go from Battlefield 4 to 1, it was just drastically different. But I think they did push that a bit too far to where it has gone away from the core values of the franchise. And now it's kind of, in a weird way, like Call of Duty is actually doing that better, where it's like, yeah, look, the game is maybe a bit stale, but I know what I'm in for. I know that when I buy a Call of Duty game, it's not going to be some random ass, like, it doesn't feel like a new IP. It is just going to be Call of Duty with some new maps. It may be one new mechanic. They got a different kill streak system or whatever, but like the core game is essentially 95% the same. Which, to be fair, I don't love that either, because it just feels like it's a big DLC pack every year, and I do like a change up, but like you said, I think that Battlefield just went way too hard with that. And it's not even really that they shouldn't have done that. It's more just that they didn't pay off, because sometimes you can try something that sounds really good and it just doesn't work. If the specialist system or whatever systems they've put in place in Battlefield 5 and 2042, if they paid off, we'd be sitting here being like, geez, these guys are geniuses. They're taking these big steps and like they're getting all this stuff right. Unfortunately, you're just not going to get everything right. So I don't even blame them necessarily for, trying to change things up, because in the past, that's what we praised them for. I don't think you can praise them in the past and then now be like, nah, go back to just always doing the exact same thing. I just think you got to look at it that, yeah, they used to do it. It's just that they used to do it properly, and now they haven't really succeeded. I think part of that, you can definitely criticize them for maybe not knowing what they need to implement, like the tornadoes and stuff. Who cares? That's not something to sell us on. Yeah. So anyway, what I think, and I remember we've talked about this way back, what I want so badly for Battlefield is the same system that Call of Duty has, where they have multiple teams working on it. Give us a game every 2 years, not every year, because that's just stupid for a game that big.
Yeah.
Every 2 years, give us a game, but alternate the developers. So you've got DICE 1 year, then you've got, whether it's a Ripple Effect, even, I don't know, bring on Respawn. Bring on a team that is proven in the shooter industry. Go and, I don't know, tell EA to freaking buy another studio or something. I don't know. Get another team on there who can make consistently good games. And from there, even though it's an every 2 year cycle, they have 4 years to make the game. So let's just say, DICE released 2042. The game they're now working on is 4 years away. And the game that's coming out, it would be this year in that case, would be the Ripple Effect game that they've had 4 years to work on. So then later this year, Ripple Effect's Battlefield game comes out. It's had 4 years in the oven. That's surely enough to make a good Battlefield game. It launches well. It's got their own take on it. It sticks to the core Battlefield identity, but it's just the same as there's Treyarch Call of Duties and Infinity Ward Call of Duties.
Yeah.
They have their own feeling to them that like, oh, this is a Treyarch game. It would be like that, where you go, this is a Ripple Effect one. Some people might not like the Ripple Effect ones as much. They might prefer the DICE ones and vice versa. That's fine. But they each have their own feeling. So then when the DICE one comes out again, it's nice that it's a new feeling. It's going to have the core values of Battlefield, but it will feel different in that it is made by a different studio. And it's giving them the time that they need while not giving us a 4 year wait. Because 4 years for me is way too long. I'm not waiting 4 years every Battlefield game.
Yeah.
But they can't do it every 2 years. Like for me, I think even 3 years, I think, is a long time to wait between each Battlefield title, unless that game is just a banger. So let's just say 2042 was the best Battlefield ever. I'd be gladly still playing it, even though I currently am still playing it. That would be different, but I think 2 years would be perfect in that it's a long enough time that we get to really sink our teeth into that game. Because for me, like Call of Duty, by the time you get fully into it, the next one's like 6 months away. That's just too quick. I think a 2 year cycle is good in that sense, that you've got a full, say, 8, the first 6 months kind of like you're just getting used to it and you're still learning all the new systems and that. you've still then got like a 2-year or an 18-month time frame to sink your teeth into it. And I think that would be that's like my perfect scenario for Battlefield, that they just, if they're going to copy one thing from Call of Duty, copy the studio system that they have. Don't put it all on DICE. They've proven time and time again they can't really launch games well. Probably because they are rushed to put them out, because EA, in all fairness, they're not going to also want a 4-year wait either. Like, just like us players wouldn't. They're not going to be like, nah, have 4 or 5 years to make it. They want one out whenever they possibly can. So give the teams enough time to work on their game, but also you're still getting content out quickly in terms of a new game every 2 years. I think that's just the best way to do it. Whether they do it, I realistically never think that will happen. Like, I'm not sure why they wouldn't, but I just feel like they'll just stick with DICE doing it forever. But if I was a higher up at EA, that's I'd be pitching that to the team and hassling everyone until they do it, because I feel like that would be like, I don't really see how that wouldn't be successful outside of just the teams just happen to make a bad game. Like, that can still happen. But I just think if you give them enough time, they've proven over time they can make good games. It's just when it's rushed, they just can't do it.
Mm-hmm. It's so strange. Game development it varies per game studio. It varies per type of game. It varies per technology that they're using to make the game. Like, there's so many different variables to it. So I think it's so complicated to think about like what works, when works, and like all of this different perspectives on it. But like, if you compare Call of Duty to Battlefield or Treyarch and their variety of game dev studios to DICE, Call of Duty has a well-oiled machine in like pumping these games out on a very consistent schedule, while Battlefield, they are trying to get better at this, and they're trying to adopt new trends, and they're trying to change things. But I feel like a problem is like it takes them 3-4 years to get a game going. By the time that they try to chase these trends, by the time the game comes out, those trends aren't going to be there. It's like Rocksteady with their new stupid Suicide Squad game. Like, they had all of these types of trends that were happening when they started development, and they baked it all in. By the time that game comes out, they've already delayed it, because everyone's like, yeah, no, we decided we hated these kinds of games like 4 years ago.
Yeah. I think that's a really big issue that I'm not sure how anyone can actually avoid that, but that's a big issue in the gaming industry, is that they take so freaking long to make that, yeah, all these trends, they seem to come and go pretty quick. And the amount of times that when you begin development on a game, there might be this big new thing. You look at like the Battlefield, the Battle Royale like spike when that first blew up. I do not blame Battlefield for trying to jump on that. The fact is that they were just kind of a little bit behind, because PUBG and Fortnite had done it so well already that there was no real reason to play it there. Whereas then you actually look at Call of Duty doing it, and they had the same failure, but then when the next time they tried it, they actually set the trends. Warzone really set the trends for the Battle Royale genre, with like a lot of the mechanics they put into it, the loadout system, the buyback system, all that stuff. That then Fortnite and Apex copied that. They didn't initially have it, and then they put in the buyback system, and or like it's different in Apex, but same sort of concept. They set the tone there. So I think when it's just straight up trying to copy, that's why it doesn't work. I think when you look at the trends and then try to take control of that trend in a way and make it your own, that's when it does work. So I think that's the only way these companies can avoid that happening, where you've just got this out of date system, is you look at what is the current trend when you're starting a game, and then maybe try to it's impossible to know, but try to think about, okay, what is that potentially going to look like in say 3 years when this game actually launches?
Yeah.
What can change in that time? And then how can we also change it so that we're not behind? Because if we just release it how it exactly is right now, in 3 years, that's outdated. So, yeah, I think that's something that Battlefield has done very poorly in that they essentially tried to copy like the hero shooter system.
Yeah.
And that even in itself is a little bit outdated. Like Overwatch and Apex and stuff, they've done that.
Yeah.
And
others have
games
tried and failed.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think that's the issue that DICE have run into, where it felt like they did used to look at the trends, but then almost try to predict where they would go and then make their own spin on it. And now it just feels like they're copying the trends, which is not. It just doesn't work when something takes that long to make. If you could make a game, just like how, we both make YouTube content, we can pump out a video in an hour. So it's like, if I notice this crazy trend on YouTube where like there's this new way to do a video and it's just everyone who does it, it blows up. It's kind of different. I can just copy it because it just takes an hour. I could jump on right now. We could find something right at this second, and in 2 hours from now, my channel has a video up in that same format.
Yeah.
That's completely different. We can really, really follow the trends, but the gaming industry sort of can't, because they all take 3 to 4 years to make, if not longer. Look at games like freaking like Red Dead and stuff. They take like 7 years. How are they possibly ever going to... That's a whole console generation. How are they even going to know like any trends?
If you set the trends, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And that's the perfect point right there, is that's what Battlefield used to do. So they didn't have to worry. They just were like, we're going to do the Levolution system. And they did it, and every other game looked at that and went, wow, that is awesome. They then, for the next game, did the Behemoth system. I've never really seen anything like that in a game before. That was awesome. Why did they take that out in the first place is also, that's another topic for another day. But yeah, like they used to really do that.
3 episodes right there.
Yeah. Yeah. I could go on about that forever. But yeah, I just think that feels like that's where they've gone wrong. They've tried to just copy even like say the Battle Pass system, although I don't mind the Battle Passes in Battlefield. They're not anything special. It's literally the same as every other game. Try to make a spin on that. So then you know how last week we were saying the Battle Pass does not feel like content? It's just like expected. That's like the standard now.
Mm-hmm.
They to be fair to them, they're adding 100 tiers of content each season on top of the map and stuff that we talk about. I don't ever praise them for the Battle Pass. I don't ever be like, I don't name that in the list of content we got, even though that's 100 things. That's a fair bit when you think about it. We've had 5 seasons. That's 500 pieces of content. The reason I don't praise them is because it isn't new. It's not exciting.
Yeah.
If they innovated on it and made this new version of the Battle Pass that then other games are going to try and adopt, I probably would praise them and consider that content if they could find some way to spin it where it's actually really good. The way that they've done it is just copying, and I don't have an issue with that. I think it's fine how it is, but it's just not exciting. It's not new.
Yeah.
I think that's where they go wrong. They really have just like copied the trends, and I just don't think that works. I think if you want to make games that are the best, you have to somewhat follow the trends, but you've got to spin them in your own way as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you need to like step into what people will end up copying rather than like, let's copy this thing.
Yeah.
And that's with everything. If you want to make a good product, don't make everything that other people are making. If you want to make good YouTube videos, make unique YouTube videos. Don't make the same kind of content that everybody else is. You either do it first, you do it best, or you do it different. Those are the only 3 options.
Yeah.
And I think they've missed out on a lot of those. But I think there's an opportunity. I do want to end this episode with the other player in the space. We mentioned them earlier. Anybody heard about Halo recently?
Yeah, it's actually really weird. When the game had its initial failures, I felt really disappointed by it. And I think because of the failures of 2042, I don't think I had the energy to like stick with it, because I was sticking with Battlefield for the channel. So I fully gave up on that game, even though it actually felt really good to play, but it had so many other issues that I just gave up on it. Every like, I don't know, 2 months on Twitter, I'll just see someone say, this has just been added, and that comes. Someone was saying the other day, there's now 52 maps in that game. That is mind blowing to
What?
me because I just haven't paid any attention to it. From what I keep hearing, that game is doing really, really well now. And because
I haven't hopped in it for
just
so
haven't-
long, just because I was like,
yeah, it's been ages since I've played it because I
I was
thought,
addicted
I just
though
kind
for a
of
while.
thought, yeah, when it first launched, I was loving it, and then I just kind of thought, okay, I'm gonna check that game off as a bust because it just wasn't doing well. It's apparently, I'm completely wrong on that. It's apparently doing really well, and everything I see on Twitter about it, it's not that common. Like I don't see posts about Halo every day, but every month or two, someone will just have this like a viral tweet that's just showing all this crazy new stuff in the game, and it looks like it's actually doing super, super well. So
I'm gonna have to pick
maybe
it
I
back
should
up
kind of
again.
give that game a bit more, give it a bit more credit.
I have to do that
'Cause
some
I just feel
research as our homework as
Yeah.
we hop back into Halo and see what's going on.
Yeah, when you said that before, I was thinking like, damn, I probably should have looked into. I was actually almost going to get some sort of like review of the game or something up to just double check because my opinion of the game is it just wasn't good. It felt fun to play. I don't even think I would say the game wasn't good. It was more the live service wasn't good. But that's my opinion from essentially 2 years ago. I actually don't currently have an opinion because after I've read all this stuff, I'm kind of like, whoa, this game is apparently doing really well. And I need to probably reevaluate my opinion because I clearly just don't know enough about the game right now because I just gave up on it.
Yeah, apparently I'm gonna have to get back into some Halo. Dude, I was like, I was solidly addicted to that game for a hot couple months.
Yeah.
And that was before they did all of that fun stuff, apparently. So, yeah, it sounds like I have to hop back in.
Yeah, I'm actually... It's a shame I just deleted it from the Xbox to fit Starfield.
Yeah.
now I'm kind of like, damn, I should have deleted something else because it's 150 gig. I'm not that keen to download that.
Yeah, it's huge.
It'd take a good minute, yeah. And that's probably... I should have looked at that and gone, hang on, why is this 150 gig? It's because there's freaking 50 maps in it, apparently. I don't know how... That's just a tweet. I should say that, take that with a grain of salt. I don't know how true it is. But
confirm on your own.
Yeah. But, I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of... Like, I just see not just about the maps, just like everything that people are talking about over the last year, maybe 6 months, just every like a month or so, I'll see just one random tweet of someone like massively praising the game. And yeah, I definitely need to revisit it at some point.
Yeah. But to kind of tie this conversation off, I feel like we're in a very interesting, like a lot of decisions are going to be made in this period. And we'll see what happens as we go forward. But I think there's a lot that Battlefield 2042 can do, and I'm excited to see where we go, honestly.
Yeah, I think similar to what we've said about how 2042 is probably a good learning experience for the franchise, where the next one should kind of benefit from the failures of this one. I hope the whole industry kind of has that as well, where it's... I hope Call of Duty... I want there to be a time again where it's a genuine competition between each game, and even though, like we just said, they're not really competing with each other, but they will be... I want it to be the point where it's competing for my money. I want to be like, damn, which of the... I can only afford, like, you know, however many games per year, which I'm going to have to miss one of these. Which one's the best one? I want that again. How it currently is, I'm kind of just like, yeah, they all don't look that good. I might just buy none of them because they're just not that exciting. And it's kind of different because we make content on it, so I'm going to buy them. But
yeah,
as a fan, currently I think how it would have been from essentially 2021 till now, if I wasn't a content creator, I probably would have potentially not bought any of these games. If I'm going to be honest. I might have looked at them. To be fair, Battlefield maybe not, because it looked so good from the trailers and stuff. I definitely would have bought that regardless. But I probably wouldn't have bought Modern Warfare 2. I probably wouldn't have. I mean, Halo.
I didn't end up buying Modern Warfare 2, so I can say, yeah, I wouldn't get that game if it didn't make content.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, I hope that I just want it to get back to that point where it's like you feel like you can't miss out on any of them. That's what it used to feel like when it was like peak Call of Duty and then Battlefield. Like, I actually remember the feeling of, I can't remember which COD it was, but I think there was one COD I was absolutely loving. and the new Battlefield was coming out, and I remember thinking like, oh, please don't launch this Battlefield game because I don't want to stop playing COD, but I have to play that new game. Like I have to play Battlefield. That's as weird as that sounds. That's a good feeling to have when you're actually not wanting a game to launch because one, you know it's going to be sick, and two, the game you're currently playing is so sick that you don't want to stop playing. Like that's a great feeling to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't had that in God knows how long. It's been 10 years, I reckon, since I've had that feeling. When a new game comes out now that looks exciting, I'm like itching for it because all the other games I'm playing are just not, they haven't hooked me. So
yeah,
with probably the exception of a lot of like single player games, but they're different because you finish them in like a month.
Yeah, and you usually have
So
like one
it's
single
kinda
player
different.
game. You have one like online game that you play regularly.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope the industry gets back, or more, the genre gets back to that point. It'll probably still be years away until that happens, I think, but I just hope that all of these dev studios look at the current state of it and try to sort of avoid that in the future.
Mm-hmm. We can only hope. But with that, thank you all for listening to this episode of The Battlefield Show. We greatly appreciate all of your support. And I'd like to thank Ethan Clark for the beautiful thumbnail. Once again, all of you for listening, and we'll see you on the battlefield.